Let's talk to Charles Feldman, co-host of KNX News Radio in Los Angeles. Charles, very good morning to you.
Good morning. I like the interesting find you have there about president to be crowned today at U.S.
Well, this is the thing. You know, it's a very exciting moment for people in Britain because our Prime Minister, our leader, is such a dud that we're looking for anything to cheer us up, quite frankly. And the fact that he hasn't been invited is also pretty rum, considering that we're supposed to be the ones with a special relationship. So he's going to be sitting around watching it on TV like everybody else.
Yeah, and actually a lot of people will watch it on TV because, as you probably know, it's going to be so cold in Washington, D.C. that they've moved the ceremony to inside the Capitol Rotunda.
Right.
They haven't done that since Ronald Reagan's second inauguration.
Right.
It's a rare thing to do. So everybody's going to have to watch it pretty much on TV.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty party atmosphere in Washington, D.C. right now. I mean, we watched some of the rally from last night. We know lots of British people who have gone over there, and obviously Nigel Farage is there, Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, is there. There's an awful lot of British politicians who are not from the Labour side, because Labour actually campaigned on behalf of Kamala Harris, unfortunately, which didn't really help them either. So it appears, anyway, to be quite a sort of a big moment for America, doesn't it?
Well, it's a huge transition. I mean, look, first of all, look at the history that we're talking about. There's only one other person who ever became president twice. So
right.
It's a rare event in American history. And the history in the past couple of years since he left office for Donald Trump, in and of itself, makes it historic. I mean, we do have to remember that despite whatever pluses he has, he does come to the office again as a convicted felon. So there is that. And that does make it a very unique
But it's such a serious felony that he's not going to serve any time in prison, and nobody really cares, do they?
Well, that was the reason why he's not serving any time in prison. Is that was basically a deal that was reached with the prosecutors in New York State. It was a local case, not a federal one. And
it was a local case about some mixed up accounting, wasn't it? More or less.
Well, right. It was about basically, you know, this was the Stormy Daniels, money that he earned. But the judge in the case said that he felt that it was not appropriate because it would be impractical to give him any kind of a sentence, fine, probation.
Right. Yeah, but everybody knows, really, Charles, why that case was brought. Everybody knows where it was brought there because they knew that they would get a conviction. You know, I don't really think it's worth spending any more than about 3 seconds on, since we're going to have, you know, what is the beginning of the end of the wokists, because I think that's a far bigger story. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump's got to say about executive orders.
Oh, you're going to have a lot of fun watching television tomorrow. Somebody said yesterday, sir, don't sign so many in one day. Let's do it over a period of weeks. I said, like hell, we're going to do it over weeks. We're going to sign them at the beginning.
I mean, I'm sorry, maybe you and I are just going to have a different opinion on this. I just find him a very entertaining individual, you know?
No, look, I haven't spoken with him in a good number of years. Actually, I think it was 2004 the last time. But I knew him fairly well in New York City in the late 80s and 90s when he was just, and I put that in quotes, just a real estate developer. And I spent a lot of time in his office, frankly. And he is a very charismatic, and in private and in person, he can be a very funny guy. But of course, in the 80s and 90s, nobody actually thought, myself included, that he would be president of the United States someday. That just didn't occur to anybody. I can tell you that.
Right. But let's not forget how bloody awful Joe Biden has been in the past 2 years, even if you don't count the first 2 years, you know, but we now know that he was, in fact, being propped up effectively by a whole series of individuals and aides and his wife when he was not really up to the job. And so, well, for all those people who say, you know, it's an absolute disgrace that Donald Trump is now the president for the second time and he's going to ruin the country and he's very dangerous. I mean, they don't seem to have much to say about a man who was doing the job, who was clearly not up to it.
Well, and there was a very good, I believe it was a New York Times piece today about just that there were an awful lot of people in the White House, and you're right, including Biden's family, that recognized quite some time ago that, he wasn't the same guy who ran for president initially, and that he was deteriorating both physically and in his mental capacities, and yet, kept the myth going that he was, vital, and that, almost every other day they wheeled somebody out from his cabinet to say something along the lines of, "Oh, we saw the president this morning, and
Yeah.
he was vigorous." And it turns out that that wasn't entirely, and I'm being generous by saying that, it wasn't entirely.
Well, it was a lie, wasn't it? Let's face it. But let's get
That's
another.
one way to put it.
Let's get a, yeah. Well, that's what we call a lie, something that isn't true. Border Control's our Tom Homan here on some of the opposition they might face.
We're going to take a lot of hate. We're going to be sued every day, numerous times. I think you'll see the left try to control the media. They're going to show the first crying female, first crying child, and say how inhumane we are. But they won't talk about 340,000 children that they've failed to take care of. They're not going to talk about the young women who have been murdered in this country at the hands of criminal cartels. We're not going to talk about the hundreds of angel moms and dads who buried their children. You want to talk about family separation? They buried their children because their children were killed by a member of a criminal cartel or someone that's not supposed to be here.
I mean, I guess that's the one question that I would have, is how successful will Donald Trump's plan on cutting back on immigration be? I mean, he's talked about mass deportations. He's talked about, ending the freedom of movement across the border. How easy is that going to be for him to do?
Not very. He's planning on signing a bunch of executive orders, in fact, right after his inauguration, including his so-called mass deportation order. But what makes that so difficult is that the states pretty much control the local law enforcement apparatus. And depending on the state, some states are very much in alignment with what Trump wants to do. Some states, such as the one I'm sitting in now, California, is not pretty much in alignment with what Trump wants to do. And in fact, the Los Angeles Police Department, for example, is barred by city statute from giving any aid or assistance to federal officials who might be out to deport even criminals. They're just not allowed to get involved. So
well, as the police. As the police.
As the police, they're not allowed.
Isn't it?
They can't aid and abet federal law enforcement in an effort for deportation, because we are a so-called sanctuary state, and Los Angeles is a so-called sanctuary city. So the political infrastructure of the state and the city is such that it is diametrically opposed to what Trump wants to accomplish in terms of deportation.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?